what will be the future for Watson? Not in terms of application, but what will be the next iterations of this kind of technology? Will we see something like this in a much smaller platform, a laptop type?
There's a great scene in an old Star Trek movie. The fourth.
Scotty is always talking to his computer there.
So in the Star Trek series, they speak to their computer, right? I mean, they talk to it, they ask it questions, they tell it to go to warp 10 or whatever, and the computer just does whatever they say, but they say it. That was the idea that we had in mind when we built Watson. We want a computer that responds to requests and commands in our natural language, understands them, and gives us back what we asked for. In the Star Trek series, everyone's talking to the computer, and there's this, in the fourth movie, they go back in time to the present day, and Scotty sits down in front of a present-day computer. Starts trying to talk to it.
Not yet.
And the modern-day people are looking at him. Why are you talking to the computer? That seems crazy to them.
Computer? Computer? Oh. Hello, computer.
I think we're not far away from computers that are going to make us forget we ever used these ridiculous devices, and we're going to be speaking to computers, and they're going to understand what we say. One of the main reasons that Watson was such a big and exciting advance is because we now have a much deeper understanding of how to make it possible to get computers to interact with us in our own language instead of forcing people to adapt themselves to what the computer needs.
Worst Actress of the Decade went to this celebutante for films including House of Wax and The Hottie and the Naughty.
What is Paris Hilton?
All right, here we go. Tweens watching this young man's video, Baby, on YouTube helped it to a record 260 million views as of summer 2010.
What is Justin Bieber?
Justin Bieber. I bet you're a fan, Watson. Good job.
Is it reliable?
It's very reliable. It answers. The most exciting thing for us about it is how good it is at estimating its own confidence. So when it gets an answer wrong, it usually knows it's wrong. So when during the game we got this now famous answer of Toronto for a question.
Right, that was Chicago.
Asked for, at least people understood the question was asking for a U.S. city, and Watson didn't really completely understand that that was the case.
Here is the clue. Its largest airport is named for a World War II hero. Its second largest for a World War II battle.
To a human, I think that's a very hard question to get wrong. And I'm used to seeing all three players nail very easy questions. So I get it right, then Brad gets it right. Watson only gets it wrong when he names a city that's not a U.S. city.
What is Toronto? With a lot of question marks.
Now people look at that and say, wait a second, Toronto isn't even a U.S. city. Watson's not dealing with structured databases. It's trying to understand language.
Is it close to the human mind?
No, it's completely different from the human mind. It works. Everything Watson does is different from the way people do it. When a person sees a question, they understand. The first thing they do is understand the question. They're not even aware that they're understanding the question, but that's the first thing a person does. And often when a person hears a question, they know if they know the answer, even if they haven't quite gotten the answer yet. They'll say, oh, I know the answer to that, and they may think for a minute and then get it. Or I know when I'm watching Jeopardy on TV, the game is very fast, and a lot of time I'm not that great at it. And one of the reasons I'm not that great at it is speed. I'll hear a question and I'll think, oh, I know, and then one of the contestants will give the answer, and then I'll say, I knew that was the answer. Watson doesn't work that way at all. So it doesn't know whether it knows the answer until it's got its answer. And it looks at its answer and determines a confidence because of all the evidence it's gathered for that answer. So its confidence is based on the strength of the quantity of evidence it's gathered for a particular answer. And it says, when I've got this much evidence, how often am I right and how often am I wrong? The show ends with these Final Jeopardy questions, which are much harder than the regular ones. You have more time to answer them, and you bet. You win or lose the game. Often you win or lose the game based on the answers to these questions. And the last question we got was about a 19th century novelist. And the question, I don't remember the exact words, but the question basically said, this author, so you know you're looking for an author, this author's most famous work was based on an account of something in Moldavia. So that was the question. Now the answer is Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula. The interesting thing, and people don't realize this, but what makes that kind of question hard for Watson is the question is actually giving you information about the book. So when Watson goes and generates all its evidence, it finds evidence for the book, but the question's not asking for the book, it wants to know the author of the book. So we call that a missing link. You are, and people do it very well, when they know the answer, they very well make these jumps, and that's extremely difficult for a computer to do.
You came up with what? Who is Bram Stoker? You are correct. Over to Ken Jennings now, and we find who is Stoker. I, for one, welcome our new computer overlord. Now we come to Watson. Who is Bram Stoker? And the wager? Hello, 17,973, and a two-day total of 77,147.
Stand up, stand up, stand up.
At that moment, it was just, wow, we won. It was just so much happiness.
It was these people who just, they did everything. I mean, no matter what I asked, no matter what I said to push on, you know, they did it.
Having Watson understand the question deeply enough to make that link, to make that jump from the book to the author and give the author as the answer was, that was a very proud moment.
Hoje o programa é especial. Estamos mostrando o mais recente popstar do mundo da tecnologia, o Watson, um supercomputador que hoje é uma celebridade por causa de um programa de TV. Mas ele tem sonhos de carreira mais sérios. Quer ajudar diagnósticos de pacientes ou ser uma mente excepcional no campo jurídico.
This notion of a massive amount of information, that it's almost inhuman to try to remember all of it at once, also applies to many situations, right? We talk a lot about the medical example, where it's inhuman to think that the whole medical literature will be at the front of the doctor's mind at the very instant that you describe this symptom or that symptom, right? One of the examples that I really like is you go into the doctor, you describe your symptoms. Okay, doctor starts thinking that might be this. Now, there's a bunch of other information, your history, your family history, test results, and all that literature out there. They don't agree. Some signal one diagnosis, some signal another. If you could objectively judge it all, right, and then say, oh, based on that, I think this might be the best diagnosis.
Other uses, not only medicine. What comes to mind?
In law, you know, you imagine this tradition of having an army of law clerks pouring through books or now online material, trying to find that case that provides precedent so that you could argue the case the way that you want to. We think that this is like the next step in how machines can help humans do higher level thought and do less and less of the mundane, which is kind of what computers have been doing all the way along, right? Even if you go back to punch cards. Obviously, we want to get some commercial benefit out of this, but it's also part of why a research division does this is because we're really trying to push that wall of what can you get computers to be able to do. Right now, Watson can digest a question and help you think through an answer. It can't think of a question itself. Could a computer do that in the future? Would it be useful for a computer to do that? Is there a way a computer could help us find our blind spots? You know, the question we didn't ask that we should have. So from a research perspective, this is a big step on a really long journey. I'm proud of the research team because they took a problem and they didn't solve it the way people had been solving it for years. They didn't just write more rules.
They went another way.
They went another way, and I think in doing so, really learned something about how we as humans think. You know? So I think the other thing that I take away from the whole project is amazement at what the human brain can do. Because this was very hard work to get a computer to be able to do one little piece of what humans do instinctively.
Watson, you have control.
Ainda existe longo caminho no desenvolvimento do Watson, mas a distância entre o raciocínio artificial e o humano está ficando menor. A cada acerto de Watson, os pesquisadores vibram, mas curiosamente eles vibram ainda mais quando Watson erra. É aí que se abre o caminho para o aperfeiçoamento. Esse é um momento de empolgação científica, mas também de reflexão sobre as consequências para o ser humano de mais um avanço desenhado pelo ser humano. Nosso programa se encerra por aqui, mas continua pela internet. Deixe sua opinião no nosso blog. O endereço é g1.com.br/globonews. Até semana que vem.